The year is 1575. The Sengoku period, Japan's century of warring states, is at its bloody peak. Warlords clash for supremacy, their armies carving up the landscape in a relentless pursuit of power. Among them, two titans are on a collision course: the ambitious Oda Nobunaga, a revolutionary modernizer, and the formidable Takeda Katsuyori, heir to a legendary cavalry tradition. Their inevitable confrontation will not just decide the fate of their clans, but will forever alter the very nature of warfare in Japan. This is the story of the Battle of Nagashino, a day when the thunder of hooves met the roar of gunpowder, and an entire era of samurai combat was brought to its knees. Our story begins with the Takeda clan, a name that struck fear into the hearts of their enemies. Led by the legendary Takeda Shingon, their cavalry was considered the most powerful military force in Japan. These mounted samurai were the living embodiment of warrior prowess, whirlwind of steel, speed, and precision. When Shingen died unexpectedly, his son, Katsuyori, inherited command. Eager to prove he was his father's equal, Katsuyori marched his army, numbering around 15,000, into the territory of Nobunaga's ally, Tokugawa Ieyasu. His target was Nagashino Castle, a modest but strategically vital outpost. Katsuyori was confident. His cavalry had never been defeated in an open-field battle. He believed that one glorious charge would shatter the enemy and solidify his reputation. Meanwhile, Oda Nobunaga was not a man to be underestimated. He was a visionary, a pragmatist who saw the future not in the traditions of the past, but in the disruptive power of new technology. While other daimyo romanticized the spear and the sword, Nobunaga was fascinated by firearms, the arquebus, a matchlock gun introduced by Portuguese traders. They were slow, inaccurate, and considered dishonorable by many samurai. But Nobunaga saw their potential. He didn't just acquire guns. He invested in them, trained soldiers to use them, and developed tactics to maximize their effectiveness. When he heard that his ally's castle was under siege, Nobunaga didn't just march to relieve it. He marched to spring a trap. Nobunaga and Tokugawa Ieyasu combined their forces, creating a massive army of nearly 38,000 men. But Nobunaga knew that numbers alone wouldn't defeat the Takeda cavalry. He chose his ground carefully, a plain near Nagashino, with a river at his back and rolling hills on his flanks. Here, he ordered his men to construct a series of simple but ingenious wooden palisades along staggered fence that would break up and slow down a cavalry charge. Behind these wooden walls, Nobunaga positioned his secret weapon, a contingent of 3,000 ashigaru, or foot soldiers, armed with arquebuses. This was an unprecedented concentration of firepower for the era. But the real genius was in the organization. Reloading an arquebus was a slow, clumsy process, leaving a soldier vulnerable. Nobunaga solved this by arranging his gunners in rotating ranks. As one rank fired, they would cycle to the back to reload, while the next rank stepped forward to fire. This created a continuous rolling volley of gunfire, storm of lead that never ceased. On the morning of June 28, 1575, Takeda Katsuyori looked across the plain. He saw Nobunaga's army arrayed behind flimsy-looking wooden fences. His veteran generals, who had served his father for decades, strongly advised against a frontal assault. It was a trap, they argued. The terrain was unfavorable, the enemy was well prepared, and the palisades were a clear obstacle. But Katsuyori's pride was on the line. He dismissed their concerns as cowardice. He believed in the invincible spirit of his samurai and the raw power of their charge. He gave the order to attack. The ground began to tremble. Takeda's cavalry thundered across the field, a crimson wave of armor and banners. Horses strained against reins, their hooves digging into the soft earth. Spears were leveled, swords were ready, and war cries split the era chorus of courage and fury that seemed unstoppable. For a brief moment, it felt as if history itself held its breath, watching the samurai charge toward what they believed would be a glorious victory. They were the greatest cavalry in Japan, the epitome of the warrior ideal. They were charging towards a line of low-born foot soldiers hiding behind a wooden fence. What could possibly go wrong? From behind the palisades, Oda Nobunaga watched them come, his expression unreadable. His arquebuses knelt in disciplined rows, barrels glinting. They were calm, drilled, and ready. A single nod from a commander triggered the command. Fire. The world exploded in a coordinated volley fire and smoke erupting simultaneously from hundreds of barrels. The crack of gunfire shattered the morning calm, a sound unlike any battle cry ever heard. It was the sound of a new age. The effect was instantaneous and horrific. The first line of Takeda samurai was annihilated. The bullets tore through the charging horses and their heavily armored riders alike. Dust and smoke mingled, blurring faces and banners, the air growing thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder. The pride of the Takeda cavalry, their renowned speed and precision, was rendered useless. Horses, struck by lead balls, screamed in panic and collapsed, throwing their riders violently to the ground. Warriors who had trained their entire lives for honorable combat were killed from a distance by an enemy they could uneven reach. The Takeda generals, leading from the front, as was their custom, were among the first to fall. Baba Nobuharu, a legendary warrior known as one of Shinhan's 24 generals, was shot down as he tried to rally his men. Yamagata Masakage, famous for his elite red unit, was also struck from his horse and killed. One after another, the pillars of the Tokina clan's military leadership were cut down. The charge faltered, broke, and dissolved into chaos. Some samurai, driven by sheer momentum and desperation, managed to reach the palisades. But here, they faced another element of Nobunaga's trap. Ashigaru spearmen, protected by the fences, pressed forward into the gaps, stabbing at the struggling horses and unseated riders. The battle devolved into a one-sided slaughter. Amid the chaos, the human cost was horrifyingly clear. Screams and shouts mingled with the pounding of hooves, the ringing of steel, and the relentless, deafening crackle of matchlocks. Some samurai tried to rally their men, raising their swords high and shouting commands, but their voices were swallowed by the noise and confusion. Every attempted charge met the same fate, a withering wall of continuous gunfire that halted them in their tracks. It was a meat grinder. Katsuyori, watching from the rear, could only look on in horror as his invincible army was systematically dismantled. The machine he had unleashed was now completely out of control, beating itself into the jaws of Nobunaga's disciplined killing field. He had staked everything on a single glorious charge, and had lost everything in a matter of hours. Eventually, with the majority of his veteran commanders and elite troops dead, the remnants of the Takeda army broke and fled. Katsuyori was forced to retreat in shame, his clan's power shattered forever. As the sun climbed higher, the valley of Nagashino was a grim tableau of carnage. The field was littered with the bodies of thousands of fallen warriors. Banners lay trampled in the mud, horses limped or lay dead, and the air was thick with the metallic temps of blood. The Takeda command structure had been completely annihilated in a single, horrifying afternoon. The Battle of Nagashino was more than just a victory for Oda Nobunaga. It was a revolution in warfare. The age of the samurai, dominated by the mounted warrior and the ideals of personal combat, had come to a brutal end. Nobunaga had proven that disciplined, well-equipped infantry with superior technology and tactics could defeat the most elite traditional army. The arquebus, once dismissed as a commoner's weapon, was now the decisive instrument of power on the battlefield. Nagashino cemented Oda Nobunaga's position as the most powerful warlord in Japan and paved the way for his eventual unification of the country. For the Takeda clan, it was the beginning of the end. They would never recover from the losses they sustained that day. The battle served as a visceral, bloody lesson that resonated across Japan. Adapt or be destroyed. The future belonged not to those who clung to the glories of the past, but to those who, like Nobunaga, had the vision to embrace the future, no matter how disruptive or ruthless it might be. The thunder of hooves had been silenced by the roar of gunpowder, and the world would never be the same again. Thank you for watching. If you found this dive into samurai history fascinating, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the pivotal moments that shaped our world. Let us know in the comments what other historical battles you'd like to see covered. Until next time, stay curious.